The lights went out before anyone understood what was happening. Not dimmed. Not flickered. Gone. 1 second, the diplomatic chamber was glowing in sterile white rows of alien delegates seated in perfect formation, their armor reflecting the calm authority of a peaceful negotiation. Next second, darkness swallowed everything. Then came the sound. A sharp, wet crack. Something heavy hit the floor. No one moved. No one breathed. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was watching. Status. One of the Varkeen commanders snapped, his voice cutting through the dark. No response. Report. Still nothing. Then, a low, uneven dragging sound echoed across the chamber floor. Like something being pulled. Or someone. A faint emergency glow finally kicked in, dim red strips along the edges of the hall. Just enough to see shapes. Not enough to understand them. And that's when they saw it. One of their own, lying motionless. Armor intact. No visible wound. But his helmet, crushed inward. As if something had gripped it and decided to close its fist. A ripple of unease spread across the chamber. That's impossible, someone whispered. They're unarmed. They're human. At the far end of the room, behind a long metallic table, the human delegation still sat exactly where they had been. Perfectly still. Too still. Faces calm. Eyes unreadable. Like nothing had happened. Like they weren't trapped in the same darkness. Like they were waiting for it. A second Varkeen stepped forward, weapon raised now. This is a violation of treaty. He didn't finish. Because this time, everyone heard it. A single footstep. So, deliberate. Close. Too close. The soldier turned, and something moved behind him. Silent. Wrong. By the time his weapon hit the ground, he was already dead. No scream. No struggle. Just another body collapsing into the red-lit silence. Now the chamber wasn't confused anymore. It was afraid. They're here, someone breathed. No, another voice corrected, shaking. They never left. And across the room, one of the humans slowly leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Watching. Not helping. Not reacting. Just watching. Like a man observing the beginning of a hunt. The red emergency light steadied, but the tension didn't. It got worse. Because now they could see each other. The Varkeen soldiers tightened formation instantly, disciplined, trained, lethal. Weapons up. Eyes scanning every shadow. Predators, trying to act like they were still in control. But something had already slipped. You said they were unarmed, one of them hissed, voice low, angry. They are, another snapped back. Scans confirmed it. No weapons. No augmentations. Nothing. Then explain this. No one could. Because nothing made sense. Their kind didn't die like that. Not silently. Not instantly. Not without a fight. Across the chamber, the human delegation finally moved. Slowly. Deliberately. One of them stood up. Not rushed. Not panicked. Just stood. Like the chaos around him wasn't worth reacting to. We advise you to remain calm, he said. His voice wasn't loud. But it carried. Too clearly. Too steadily. One of the Varkeen commanders let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Calm, he repeated. 2 of my soldiers are dead in a secured chamber, and you tell me to remain calm? The human didn't respond immediately. He just looked at the bodies. Then back at the commander. You came here expecting control, he said quietly. That was your first mistake. Weapons shifted instantly, now fully aimed at the humans. There it is, another soldier muttered. I knew it. This is a setup. You think this is a trap? The commander growled. What else could it be? The room tightened. Fear was turning into aggression. And aggression was exactly what they understood. Enough, the commander barked. All human delegates, step forward. Now. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then one of the humans actually smiled. Not nervously. Not defensively. Just mildly amused. You still think this is about us, he said. That was it. That was the shift. Not obvious. Not loud. But enough to make something in the room feel off. The commander stepped forward, weapon locked on the speaker. On your knees, he ordered. This time, the human complied, slowly lowering himself. Hands visible, head slightly bowed. Perfect submission. And instantly, the tension cracked just a little. There was the confirmation they needed. "They're bluffing," one of the soldiers said under his breath. "Of course they are," another replied. "They're diplomats, not warriors." The commander exhaled, grip tightening on his weapon, but confidence creeping back in. "This ends now," he said. Behind him, his unit repositioned, tight, efficient, dominant. In front of him, the humans looked smaller now, quieter, contained. Exactly what they were supposed to be. Harmless, controlled. And yet, in the dim red light, the one kneeling human slowly lifted his eyes. Not in fear, not in defiance, but with something far worse. Recognition. Like he had seen this moment before. Like he knew exactly how it would end. And somewhere in the shadows behind them, another soft sound echoed. Not loud enough to locate. Not clear enough to understand. But enough to remind them, this wasn't over. Not even close. The commander didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and drove the barrel of his weapon down, hard, until it pressed against the kneeling human skull. "Whatever game you think you're playing," he said coldly, "it ends now." The human didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. Just stayed there still, almost bored. "Final warning," the commander snapped. Silence answered him. That was enough. He turned slightly, gesturing to one of his soldiers. "Restrain him." The soldier moved in immediately, fast, precise, confident. This was familiar territory now. Control restored. Threat contained. Or so he thought. He reached down, grabbed the human by the arm, and froze. Just for a fraction of a second. Too small for anyone to question. Too quick to matter. But it happened. "Move," the commander barked. The soldier pulled, and nothing happened. Not resistance. Not struggle. Just nothing. Like he was trying to lift something that wasn't supposed to move. "Sir," the soldier muttered, confused now. "He's not." The human moved. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just a slight shift of his wrist. And suddenly, the soldier's grip broke. Effortless. Wrong. Before anyone could react, the human stood up. Smooth. Controlled. Unstoppable. The commander fired. The shot cracked through the chamber. Loud, sharp, final. But it didn't land. Because the human wasn't there anymore. For a split second, no one understood what they had just seen. A body dropped behind them. Heavy. Lifeless. One of their own skin. No scream. No fight. No warning. Just gone. "That's not possible," someone whispered. "It's not possible." Now the room shifted again. Not back to fear. Something deeper. Something colder. Because this time, they had seen it. Not clearly. Not fully. But enough. Speed that didn't make sense. Strength that wasn't visible. Precision that felt practiced. The commander stepped back instinctively, weapon rising again, but slower now. Careful. Calculating. "What are you?" he demanded. The human tilted his head slightly. Not answering. Not explaining. Just watching. Like the question itself didn't matter. Behind them, another soldier suddenly gasped. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the tension. "I saw something," he said, voice shaking. "In the dark, behind us." No one turned this time. No one wanted to. Because now, they understood the real problem. It wasn't just one. And whatever was moving in the shadows wasn't rushing anymore. It didn't need to. The illusion was broken. Control was gone. And for the first time since the lights went out, the Varkeen weren't acting like predators anymore. They were acting like something else. Something that had just realized it wasn't at the top of the food chain. No one fired. That was the first mistake. Because now, they were thinking. And thinking it was slowing them down. "Form up," the commander snapped, backing toward the center. "Close perimeter. No one moves alone." This time, there was no hesitation. The remaining Varkeen soldiers tightened instantly, Backs nearly touching, weapons covering every angle. Disciplined. Efficient. Trying to force the situation back into something they understood. But the problem was, this wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was something else. Something quieter. Something worse. Thermal scan, one of them said quickly. Find them. A pulse of blue light swept across the chamber. Walls. Bodies. Metal. Clear. Empty. No targets, the soldier reported. That's impossible, the commander snapped. Scan again. Another pulse. Slower this time. More focused. Still nothing. And that's when one of them disappeared. No sound. No warning. 1 second he was there. Next second, a literal gap in their formation. Where? The question didn't finish. Because the answer came from above. A body dropped from the ceiling. Not falling. Please. Deliberately. It hit the ground between them with a sickening thud. Helmet twisted. Neck bent at an angle that shouldn't exist. And for the first time, someone broke formation. Just one step back. But that was enough. Because the moment the formation loosened, the next one went down. This time they saw it. A blur. Gone. Gunfire erupted instantly, wild, uncontrolled. Energy blasts tore across the chamber, hitting walls, columns, empty space. Nothing connected. Nothing slowed it down. Stop firing, the commander roared. Too late. Panic had already started. And panic was exactly what this thing was waiting for. The lights flickered again. Just once. But it was enough. In that split second of darkness, something moved through them. Not around. Through. And when the light came back, 2 more were down. No fight. No resistance. Just removed. Now there were only a few left. Breathing heavier. Aiming slower. Thinking harder. Dying faster. They're controlling the environment, one of them said, voice tight. Lights, positioning, timing. They're controlling us, another corrected. And that's when it clicked. Not fully, but enough to change everything. This isn't random, the commander said quietly. This is structured. He turned slowly, scanning the room, not for targets anymore, but for patterns, for intent, for design. And across the chamber, the human delegation still hadn't moved. Still seated. Still calm. Watching. Not intervening. Not reacting. Like this wasn't chaos. Like this was procedure. And one of them, the same one who had knelt before, was now standing again, hands behind his back, posture relaxed, observing, like a man overseeing a process that was going exactly as expected. The commander locked eyes with him, and for the first time, he didn't see weakness. He didn't see diplomacy. He saw something else. Something colder. You're not under attack, the human said quietly. The commander didn't respond, didn't blink, didn't look away, because now, he was starting to understand. You're being processed. Silence. Heavy. Final. And somewhere in the chamber, another step echoed. Not rushed. Not hidden. Just patient. No more guessing. The commander's voice wasn't loud anymore. It didn't need to be, because panic had burned out, and something colder had taken its place. Focus. They're not invisible, he said slowly. They're not teleporting. His grip tightened around his weapon. They're controlling engagement. The pause. Which means they want us alive. That idea landed heavy, because it was worse than death. Across the chamber, one of the humans finally stepped forward. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just deliberate. You're adapting, he said. No sarcasm. No mockery. Just observation. Good. The commander turned his weapon toward him instantly. Call them off, he demanded. The human tilted his head slightly. Why? That word hit harder than anything else so far. Because this is a diplomatic chamber, the commander snapped. This is a violation of... Of what? The human interrupted quietly. Expectation? Silence. The human took another step forward. Measured. Controlled. You walked into this room assuming hierarchy, he continued. You believed strength was visible. Measurable. Predictable. Another step. And now that it isn't, you call it chaos. Behind the commander, another faint movement. No one turned. No one dared. Because now they knew. Turning didn't help. This isn't chaos, the human said. It's structure. The commander's jaw tightened. What are they? He asked. Not demanded. Asked. That shift mattered. A lot. The human stopped just a few meters away now. Close enough to see clearly. Too close to feel safe. They are not soldiers, he said calmly. That alone broke expectation again. Because nothing about this felt like anything else. They are not defense units. Not security. The pause. They are baseline. Silence. Heavy. Confusing. Wrong. Baseline? What? One of the remaining soldiers whispered. The human looked at him. And for the first time, there was something close to emotion in his eyes. Not anger. Not pride. Just certainty. Human. That word didn't land the way it should have. It didn't sound weak anymore. It didn't sound small. It sounded like something else. Something unfinished. The commander's mind raced. Impossible, he muttered. No species evolves like this without. Without announcing it, the human finished. Another step closer. Without asking permission? Behind them, a soft sound again. Closer now. Always closer. We are not stronger than you, the human continued. That made no sense. We are not faster. Not more durable. That made even less sense. But we are. He paused slightly, and this time, there was the faintest hint of something darker in his voice. Persistent. Now something clicked. Not fully, but enough. Hunting, the commander said slowly. Not a question. A realization. The human didn't confirm it. Didn't need to. Endurance, the commander continued, thinking out loud now. Tracking, pressure, isolation. He looked around the chamber again, but this time not in fear. In understanding. You're not trying to overpower us, he said. You're wearing us down. The human gave the smallest nod. Finally, a piece of truth. You were never the target, he added. That froze everything again. Then what is? The commander demanded. The human didn't answer immediately. He just looked at them, what was left of them, and then slightly past them, into the shadows. Behavior, he said, and right on cue. Another body dropped. The last soldier behind the commander. Gone. Now it was just him. Alone. Breathing slower. Thinking faster. Understanding too late. This wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a massacre. It was something far more precise. The test. And he had just failed it. The chamber felt smaller now. Not physically, but mentally. Like the walls had moved closer, without actually moving. The commander didn't raise his weapon again. Didn't shout. Didn't threaten. Because none of that mattered anymore. There was no one left to command. Only him. And whatever was still inside this room. You said this was a test, he said slowly. His voice was steady, but only because he was forcing it to be. What exactly are you measuring? The human didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked past him. Not around. Past. Close enough that the commander could feel it. That unnatural calm. That complete lack of urgency. Like time didn't apply the same way. We measure response, the human said finally. Behind them, something shifted. A scrape. A breath. Too close. The commander didn't turn. He'd learned that lesson. Response to what? He asked. The human stopped a few steps ahead. Pressure. The lights dimmed again. Not fully dark this time. Just enough to distort vision. Shadows stretched. Corners deepened. Distances felt wrong. Most species break quickly, the human continued. They rely on clarity. Structure. Control. Another sound. To the left this time. A faint exhale. Almost human. Almost. When those disappear, so do they. The commander swallowed. Not out of fear. Out of awareness. Because now, he could feel it. Not see it. Not hear it clearly. But feel it. Movement. Circling. Waiting. You isolate, he said quietly. Yes. You remove visibility. Yes. You create uncertainty. Yes. Each answer came without hesitation. Without pride. Like they were discussing something routine. Something obvious. You're not fighting, the commander said. The human turned slightly. Just enough to meet his eyes again. No. The pause. And then. The truth delivered without weight. We're filtering. That word hit differently. Cold. Clinical. Final. Behind the commander. A whisper. Right next to his ear. Not loud. Not aggressive. He froze. Didn't move. Didn't react. Because now he understood something critical. It wanted him to react. Slowly, very slowly, he spoke again. You could have killed me already. Yes. Then why haven't you? Silence. Long enough to hurt. But you're still adapting. The commander exhaled quietly. Almost a laugh. Almost. So this ends when I stop being useful? The human didn't respond. Didn't need to. Another shift in the shadows. Closer now. Closer than before. The commander closed his eyes for a brief second. Not in defeat. In focus. When he opened them again, something had changed. Not in the room. In him. You're making a mistake, he said. The human raised an eyebrow slightly. Explain. You think pressure reveals truth, the commander said. But it doesn't. The pause. It creates it. For the first time, the human actually seemed interested. Go on. The commander adjusted his stance. Not defensive. Not aggressive. Something else. You've been controlling everything, he continued. Light. Movement. Fear. Another breath. Steadier now. But control isn't dominance. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. It's dependence. That hung in the air. And for the first time since the lights went out, the pattern shifted. Subtly. But enough. Because somewhere in the shadows, something stopped moving. Just for a second. Just long enough to notice. The human's gaze sharpened slightly. And the commander saw it. That tiny shift. That microscopic reaction. And he smiled. Not because he had won. But because, for the first time, he had affected the system. The smile didn't last long. Because the moment it appeared, the room responded. Not violently. Not instantly. But deliberately. Like a system correcting itself. The shadows shifted again. But this time, not around him. Toward him. The commander's grip tightened. Good, he muttered under his breath. Now we stop pretending. For the first time, he moved first. Precise. He pivoted sharply and fired, not randomly, not in panic, but at a specific angle. A calculated guess. The blast hit something. Not clean. Not lethal. But enough. A shape flickered into view. Just for a fraction of a second. Humanoid. Close. Too close. And then, gone again. But that was enough. Proof. I see you, the commander said quietly. Behind him, another presence. This one didn't wait. It came in fast. Post-drive, aimed at the spine. But this time, he reacted, twisting just enough, taking the hit along his side instead of his center. Pain hit instantly. He didn't fall. Didn't slow. Caught something. Not fully. But enough to feel it. Solid. Alive. And for the first time, one of them stopped. Not by choice. By force. The commander tightened his grip, locking onto the arm he couldn't fully see. Got you. No anger. No triumph. Just confirmation. For a split second, everything paused. The rest moved. Not one. Not two. All of them. The room exploded into motion. No more silence. No more patience. This was the shift. The hunt had escalated. The commander barely had time to react. A second strike hit from behind. Then another from the side. Precise. Overlapping. They weren't attacking randomly anymore. They were coordinating. Adjusting. Learning him. Adapting in real time. Just like he had. Adaptive pressure, he muttered through clenched teeth. Another hit. This one heavier. He staggered, but didn't drop. Didn't break. Instead, he changed. His movements became tighter, smaller, efficient. No wasted motion. No hesitation. He wasn't fighting them anymore. He was surviving them. Matching rhythm. Matching pace. Turning chaos into pattern. And for a brief moment, it worked. He landed another hit. Cleaner this time. Something shifted back. A real connection. One of them adjusted position. Slower now. Just slightly. But noticeable. The commander exhaled sharply. They're not perfect. That was the opening. Tiny. Fragile. But real. Across the chamber, the human observer watched closely now. No longer passive. No longer detached. Interested. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. The commander stepped back into a defensive stance. Breathing controlled despite the damage. You adapt, he said quietly. The shadows stilled again. Just slightly. Listening. So do we. And then, everything stopped. Not gradually. Not naturally. Instantly. Like someone had flipped a switch. The pressure vanished. The movement ended. The room went still. But this time, it wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was something else. Completion. The human stepped forward once more. Slow. Measured. Final. That's enough. No one argued. No one resisted. Because whatever this was, it had reached its conclusion. The commander straightened slightly. Injured, breathing heavier, but still standing. Barely. But standing. And that was the result. The silence didn't feel like relief. It felt decided. The commander stood there, injured, breathing controlled, mind still racing. But deep down, he already knew. This wasn't over. Not really. You said this was a test, he said slowly. So what's the result? The human stepped closer. No distance now. No barriers. Just clarity. You adapted longer than most, he said. Not impressed. Not disappointed. Just recorded. The commander let out a quiet breath. And that means the pause. Just long enough to matter. It means you're worth talking to. That should have sounded like a victory. It didn't. Because now, the real question surfaced. What happens to the ones who aren't? He asked. The human didn't answer. Didn't need to. The bodies on the floor already had. The commander nodded once. Understood. Accepted. He looked around the chamber again. The damage. The dead. The silence. And finally, back at the human. This wasn't a security response, he said. It wasn't even retaliation. The beat. This was selection. The human gave a slight nod. Accurate. Cold. Final. The commander exhaled slowly. Then let me ask you something else. The human waited. Where are your soldiers? That question hung in the air. Longer than anything else so far. Because this time, it actually mattered. The human didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced briefly toward the shadows. And for the first time, they moved differently. Not hidden. Not hunting. Withdrawing. Returning. Like whatever had been unleashed was no longer needed. Then he looked back at the commander and said the one line that changed everything. These weren't soldiers. Silence. Heavy. Wrong. The commander's brow tightened. Then what were they? The pause. And then, the truth. Delivered without weight. Without drama. Without mercy. Civilians. Nothing moved. Nothing reacted. Because for a moment, the brain refused to process it. That's not possible, the commander said automatically. No trained unit moves like that. They're not trained, the human replied. That made it worse. They're conditioned. Now it clicked. Fully. Completely. Terrifyingly. The commander looked back at the chamber. But this time, not at the bodies. At the implication. This level of precision, this level of control, was baseline. Then what the hell did their military look like? You invited us here, the commander said slowly. Not accusing. Not angry. Just connecting the dots. Yes. And you knew we might act aggressively. Yes. And this was your response? The human shook his head slightly. No. The beat. This was our filter. The word hit again. Harder this time. Because now, it had context, meaning, scale. You didn't defend yourselves, the commander said quietly. You evaluated us. Yes. Silence. The final realization. The one that actually mattered. The commander met his eyes one last time. You were never negotiating, he said. The human held his gaze. Steady. Unapologetic. No, he said. We were deciding. And just like that, everything that had happened in that room changed meaning. No one spoke for a while. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything that mattered had already been said. The commander stood still, absorbing it, replaying every second, every movement, every death, not as chaos anymore, but as design. You could have killed all of us in seconds, he said quietly. The human didn't deny it. Yes. Then why didn't you? The pause. Not for effect. For precision. Because extinction doesn't teach. That answer settled deep. Deeper than fear. Deeper than defeat. The commander let out a slow breath. Not shaky. Not broken. Just aware. You wanted to see how we respond under pressure. Yes. And if we failed? The human didn't look at him. He looked at the bodies instead. You did. Silence. Cold. Absolute. No anger. No hatred. Just outcome. The commander nodded once. Accepted. He straightened fully, ignoring the pain, ignoring the blood. Because now, he understood his position. Not as a soldier. Not as a commander. But as a result. What happens now? He asked. The human studied him for a moment. Long enough to measure. Short enough to decide. Now, he said, we begin actual communication. That line should have felt normal. It didn't. Because everything before this hadn't been communication at all. It had been judgment. Selection. Filtering. The commander gave a faint, humorless smile. All of this, he gestured slightly to the room, just to decide if we're worth talking to? The human met his gaze. Steady. Unapologetic. Yes. No hesitation. No diplomacy. Just truth. The kind that doesn't care how it sounds. Another silence followed. But this one was different. Not heavy. Not suffocating. Resolved. Because now, the hierarchy was clear. Not declared. Not enforced. Understood. The commander looked around one last time. Not at the loss. But at the lesson. Then back at the human. You don't see yourselves as peaceful, he said. The human considered that for a second. Very slightly. He shook his head. We are peaceful. The pause. And then, the line that would define everything that came after. Because we choose to be. No threat. No emotion. Just fact. And somehow, that made it worse. The lights came back on. Full brightness. Controlled. Like nothing had happened. The shadows were gone. The movement gone. The presence gone. Only the bodies remained. And the realization. The commander lowered his weapon slowly. Not in surrender. In understanding. Because this was never a war. It was an introduction. And humanity had just made its first impression.